Welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. Tim, Michael, Mo, and the occasional guest discussing digital analytics issues of the day. Find them on Facebook at facebook.com/Analytics Hour and their website, analyticshour.io. And now, the Digital Analytics Power Hour.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Analytics Power Hour. This is episode 138. Hi, Mo.
Hey.
How you doing?
Oh yeah, I'm all right.
Hey, Tim. How you doing?
I gotta say, it's a little weird to not have all of us in the same room for this recording like we normally are.
Right, normal.
So,
yeah. No, we've had to engage in social distancing.
You were really saving that up, weren't you?
Yeah. That was one he didn't let in on anywhere in the show prep.
Might have only occurred to me 12 seconds ago.
You know, we're really in the midst of it right now, in the words of Cardi B. Coronavirus. The whole world is now basically working from home, whether we like it or not. And, as analytics professionals, we deal with being both remote and in the office. There's some pros and cons to each, but we've never actually done a show where we talked about some of the things that go with working from home. I know, Tim, you work from home pretty much full time, right? For many years now.
Yeah. I think in the 12 years since I've been in Ohio, I was not working from home for maybe 3 of them. So.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty legit. Mo, you work from home, just periodically, or have you done long stints of working from home in your career?
I haven't done more than like a few weeks at a time. Yeah.
Okay. Current coronavirus situation notwithstanding.
Yeah.
And same here. I think I've intermittently worked from home. So over the last 5 months, I've worked from home after I started AJL Analytics. And the first 9 months before I moved to Atlanta, when I joined Search Discovery, I worked remotely. So I've got some experience, but I think, I'm probably in that group of people who, for whatever reason, I like and enjoy being in the office, but I still get a lot done when I'm at home too. But it's interesting. All right. So I wanted to talk about it. And if you'll remember a little while back, we actually got some tweets from our listeners and got some good tips and tricks from some of you, which we'll also try to share throughout the show as well. Well, it's certainly not, what's the right way to say this? Not ideal, the way that we're all getting to experiencing working from home.
I mean, my number one tip is when you're shopping for a home, kind of, if you're going to be working from home, you should buy a house with room for a space that you can set aside, which I think may be a little tricky to do for people who find out on, a week's notice that they're likely going to be working from home.
It's like your dining room table is now your full-time office for the foreseeable future.
Or for one of my poor staff members who is stuck in China, went home to visit his parents for a week. And now whenever I'm on a Zoom call with him, his parents periodically walk behind because they live in a fairly small apartment and he was just meant to be there on holidays.
Which the other, I think most typically when working from home, there is schedule flexibility that comes in. So if you have kids, there's the ability to kind of work around their schedules. I think there is definitely the unique situation now that many people are working from home for the first time while their children's normal daycare or schooling routine is. So I think some of the thoughts as we were kind of prepping for this, there are things that are general things that are good for working remotely. And there are a lot of blog posts and articles out there kind of making some of these points. And some of them are actually not actually legit, necessarily right now. So
yeah, you may not be getting the best of it. Yeah.
Do you know what I would say though? Because my entire company went remote and we're so blessed that we could do that very quickly. Learning to work from home when everyone else is in the same boat is actually kind of pleasant. I think when you start working from home, but everyone else in your company is not, it's all on you to make it work. Whereas when everyone's in the same boat, it's like the whole leadership team, everyone's checking in on the staff. People are being really thoughtful about how do we have this meeting or this workshop and make sure everyone feels included. But when you're the Tim, for example, but the rest of your company's in an office, I think it's harder.
Yes.
Which actually was when I moved to Ohio from Austin, there was only 2 other remote workers and everyone else was it was a small company. everyone else was in the office. And that was kind of you have to coach in those situations. You actually do need to make sure the non-remote workers are following the etiquette of make sure you're checking with the people on the call, make sure you share. Yeah.
If there's a mixed environment where some people are remote and some are in an office, it's so crucial. I remember some of my experiences. It really formed how we did most of that at Search Discovery, was remembering how in those first 9 months, not because anybody was bad, but like, I'm the new guy on the team and I've got a meeting with a couple people and I'm the only one that's showing up. And I'm like, what's going on? Is anybody still there? Like, and nobody is telling me that they just decided to move the meeting to a different time or cancel it altogether. And I'm like, yeah, you're really leaving me hanging here, folks. This was so long ago. We didn't even have Slack back then. Imagine that.
Whether it's Slack, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whatever it is, when I was first working remote 12 years ago, I was still engaged. We had chat, right? There would be chats and we would still hop on video calls. We didn't have nearly kind of the ability to have multi-threaded kind of collaborative instructions, but I think or tools or mechanisms. I think that's a big thing with working remote. I've never really felt disconnected when working remotely because there's a second monitor with whatever the collaboration tool is. There are generally enough meetings. I'm just like everybody else. Like, I worship a day that has only a small number of meetings and I actually can get some time to hunker down and focus. So,
yeah.
But see, one of my teammates that I was catching up with yesterday, he's actually been struggling working from home because when he's in the office and he needs to do like deep technical work, he kind of just mutes everything, like email, Slack. He'll close them for a few hours. And he's like, I can't do that right now because if someone can't just walk over to me if something's urgent and be like, hey, I actually really need to interrupt you because this is blown up. Because if you shut all those things down and there is something urgent, then how will they contact you? So he's like, I just find I'm getting like checking Slack way more. And that interruption is really stopping me from getting in the zone, which I really didn't think about.
As an analyst, I mean, granted, depending on the role and kind of what the criticality is, generally, sure. If people are really desperate, they can call your cell phone or something. I mean, right, there are lots of things that get treated as the asker will walk over because they really would like to find this out now. If you have the discipline to say, which I, by the way, be clear, I do not. If you have the time management discipline to say, I'm going to only check my email 3 times a day, I'm going to close Slack down. It's not like people can't, and the people who aren't there all the time. So I don't know how much, and I'm not judging your coworker in any way, shape, or form. I don't manage to shut it down because I probably still subscribe to that myth. Like, oh, what if somebody has an urgent data question? Like, well, guess what? They could probably wait for 2 hours.
Yeah, but I also think it's this thing. So we have a guy who was working overseas for our company for the last year and he just came back. And he was kind of sharing his tips with us. And he was like, you have to be really careful because when you're working from home, sometimes you actually, and I fall into this trap, I end up working more because you almost want to prove that you're working. And so the perception of like turning off Slack so you can get like technical time is something that's scary to people because they'll be like, oh, maybe people think I'm slacking off. Well,
Yeah. One thing I've observed over the years is that there are definitely 2 distinct kinds of people when it comes to working remotely. There are the folks who will tend to overwork and you've got to pull them back. And there are the people who will tend to not do as much because there's no one kind of asking them for things. And so you have to kind of know your group. And now that all of us have kind of been forced into this role, we have to kind of do our work to figure out which type we are. I was in the process of hiring someone and they actually eventually turned the offer down, not because they didn't want to come and work with us, but that they knew themselves well enough to know that working fully remote, they would tend to overcommit so much. They didn't want to take that on for themselves. And I was like, I respect that decision because it's very difficult. And I'm not great at it. I tend to look at being remote as a bigger test of your self-regulatory skill set is really what it comes down to. Because those of us who tend to sort of, like you expressed, Mo, like, well, I want people to know I'm working and I want to be available to people. We'll just kind of keep going and going and going.
Well, I don't think for me it's like knowing that I'm available to people or like proving that I'm working. For me, it's more like my desk is right there, so I'll go just do this other thing. Or like, oh, I have 10 minutes while this is cooking, so I'll go do this other thing. And then, I mean, the other night someone messaged me at 10:30 being like, hey, did you know that your pull request has been approved? And so I ran downstairs to merge my code because I was so pumped and I wanted to like push it before someone changed something, which is not normal. And I was like, dude, you should not be getting out of bed at 10:30 at night to go push your code. That's messed up.
But even in the office, wouldn't you say that probably that means you're probably eating your lunch at your desk? You're not getting up and away from your desk to kind of walk the aisles and socialize with people and do a little bit of like inter-office networking. So those practices actually show up in both places. And I think that you need to look at them really critically in both places. But there's also the flip side of that, which is some people will tend to not be as productive because they're easily distracted. And so, that can also happen.
We have a few people in our team like that who've basically said like, I find working from home really hard. I do get distracted. I'm working in my room. My bed is sitting right over there.
Which that's like that is kind of the common advice is make sure you define your workspace and maybe it doesn't mean you have to be there all the time. You know, I think like Jason Egan, one of the tweets at Jason Egan, we don't know him. We've worked with him, but one of his tweets was make your home office an area that is exclusively for that purpose. It helps in separating home and work. I go back 20 years. I had early days. My best friend growing up, and he and his wife lived like 2 blocks from us in Austin, and they had moved. She wound up working remotely because they were moving for his work, and her company said, sure, we can try this out. So she was definitely in the like lone wolf, only, by herself, and in a very high stress job without nearly the technology we have now. And she said she really struggled. She had an office, and she said, I just have to get to where I shut the door at the end of the day and I don't go back in there until the morning. I'm like I think you do, but at the same time, and maybe this is me just not wanting to admit, I just have the hybrid space. I've made my office a very comfortable space. I have my guitar in here. There's a comfortable chair so somebody can come and hang out. And so I definitely wind up in the fluid. I'm in here every weekend. It's also where my home computer is that I'm going to sit and do other stuff. So I think it's probably good advice, but I've never remotely followed it personally, and it seems to have, I'm fine with it.
It's funny. So I think there are 2 types of people, those that are good at working from home and find it easy and they're more productive, and those that really struggle to focus. And then likewise, I think that there are another 2 type of people who work from home, and those are the ones that like need a really strict work from home routine, need to like create that space and like separate it. And then the other one actually who I spoke to in prepping for this episode is my sister, who's worked from home for years. And she's like, she does have a separate space, but she also is like, one of the things that I really struggle with is everyone's always like, it's all about routine. Make sure you get up in the morning, you have a shower, you have coffee and breakfast, and like start your day the same you would as the office. And she's like, I like working from home because of the flexibility. I like going and checking some emails, and then like at 11 o'clock, I'll go have a shower. Or I do the same thing. Like I like to walk my dog at lunchtime because then I get fresh air, or run some errands at lunchtime. Like there is a group of people who like working from home because it means that they can mix up their day. Some days start at 7, some days start at 9, depending on whether you're doing a drop off at daycare, or like it's the flexibility that you get from it. And I don't know. I kind of think that also makes sense, right?
So it's basically just do your fucking job and do it however you want. Figure it out.
But I think some of that comes with experience. Being like Michelle's a really experienced working from home person. She's done it for a really long time, very successfully. And I think you build the capability to build that flexibility in. And I think maybe when you're starting out, psychologically, the structure helps you do that process of building that. But then then start to freestyle once you're comfortable. Like, and we've been going at it now for about a month. Well, a little less than a month now when this podcast comes out. And some of us will be starting to get the swing of it, and some of us will be hating every minute of it, and some of us will need to push ourselves to, because I roll out of bed, 15 minutes before my first meeting of the day. Sometimes it's not ideal, but it does happen. And then other times I'm up like really early. I'm making my breakfast and my coffee and doing my whole routine. And then it's like, give yourself some freedom to kind of explore it both ways, but also, like Michelle said, use the space. Like, hey, I don't have any meetings between 11 and 1. Great. I'm going to run some errands, take a shower, and walk the dog. And that's great. And then I'll work around that. That's the beauty of working remotely, is we get flexibility in our workday.
Without consciously doing it all, but I would even say I do it on the weekends. Like I guess I fall in the category of, not that it wouldn't even occur to me. I know that once I start working, I'm probably not going to be in the, now's the time to stop and go take a shower. Like I get up, I take a shower. I've got my morning news routine. I've got my breakfast routine. I'm in the office between 7 and 7:30. I don't obsess whether it's 7 or 7:30. I've got a little bit of flexibility there.
Right.
And then over the last probably 5 years, I've gotten to where, just from a personal health, and I enjoy it, that if I have a break somewhere in the vicinity of a lunchtime, that will be grab food and walk a dog for a bit. And I'm like, oh yes, I enjoy that. But it is now definitely a structured, of course, dogs are really good about, I've got one dog, because it's been raining today and I was jam packed in meetings, who's basically been looking at me like, dude, like, we never did that thing. So we'll finish recording, and he's probably going to get a bit of a walk in the rain at dusk.
Dude, yeah. You also just insinuated, which I also know to be true, that you work a lot on the weekend. So how are those boundaries working out for you, mate?
Well, that's the thing. It's not, I don't do the boundary thing. I do the routine. I do the initiating the day routine, but which gets back to just do whatever fucking works for you. Like, I guess there's part of me that feels like even this whole topic, I'm like, but this writ larger, there are lots of things where we tend to have the very prescriptive, here's how to manage your time. Like, fuck you. I manage my time. You should use to-do lists. You should not use to-do lists. You should color code your to-do lists. And it's like, how about yourself? And if you're motivated and you like your job, you'll get shit done and you'll figure out what works.
But not everyone falls into that bucket. Lots of people are motivated and they get shit done. But then when they work from home, that kind of falls apart. Because they don't have that external support.
Yes. Tim, I don't expect you to understand these people. It's okay.
I don't understand the people who really want to help them figure it out. I'm like, I don't know. Why don't you tell them to figure it out?
At some point, you do kind of have to sit down and get some work done. And there's no getting around that.
You can have a standing desk. You don't have to sit down. Okay. I don't know why you're being so fucking prescriptive. You know what?
Gosh, Tim, you're so right. You are 100% right, Tim. Also, if you want to work from home with Tim Wilson, go to... Go ahead and dox you right on the podcast.
He has a spare desk. Desk, right in his office. He loves people to hot desk there.
I've worked from Tim's office before many years ago. I have to say it was a very productive couple of hours, I got to say. So I think one tip that we got from folks on Twitter, a guy by the name of Chris Danks wrote us and is sort of giving everybody the idea that when you get dressed, go ahead and get dressed all the way. Don't think that you're going to be on just half a video and only wear half an outfit. So that's one of those ones that's tricky, right? I personally like to get up, get dressed, and I'll wear more comfortable clothes, but I will dress for the day. And then sometimes I'll even change at the end of the workday, because it for me has always signified a shift of leaving work. So when I'm at the office, I come home and I shift into I take off my shoes. A more relaxed pair of pants or shorts.
Put on your little Mr. Rogers cardigan.
Exactly. You got it. That's my routine. I'm still practicing the throwing the shoe from one hand to the next, but we'll get there.
I put pants on at the end of the day. That's my routine.
That's right. Yeah, that's how you signal. If I put pants on, that means I'm not working anymore.
Exactly.
I get dress the same. Like I dress the same as I would if I was going to work.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Jamie obviously is working from home as well. And the other day I was like, so you gonna like take a shower today? Like you're still in your gym clothes and walking the dog? And he's like, yeah, but like now I'm ready to go. I'm like ready for anything. I can like go do another workout. I'm like, cool. Like you're still in your gym shorts though. So
We're not newlyweds anymore, are we? Because I don't want to look at that. I don't want to smell you all day, dear.
I mean, it does get you ready for 2-a-days. I have noticed that I will shave a lot less when I'm working from home. It's usually like, about once a week. And then you're like, where's my next client meeting or prospective client meeting? Okay, I better shave that morning. So you're ready for that. But yeah, wear clothes.
It seems like on the routine front, so we're covering that there are a bunch of different options. I liked I actually really did. I'll grant you I like the idea of now's an opportunity. Well, one, we haven't said it. Now's an opportunity for people to figure out if they like working from home.
Yes.
So take advantage, try some of these different structures, try not showering when you get up, try the looser, try the more structured. I think there are some kind of what should be non-negotiables. And now as I've got clients who are working from home for the first time, although I've also had colleagues who've been working remotely for years who don't know this, like some of the non-negotiables, like you need to have a good audio setup. You need to have a good internet connection. Good internet connection might be harder to switch on a dime.
well, some people don't have control of that. Like in Australia, when my internet sucked, there was absolutely, I was on the best possible plan that I could. There was nothing I could do about it. Tim looks speechless.
No. You should strive for, well, I went through periods and they'll, even in the US, they'll be like, this was fine for 3 years and then it went to shit. But I think the good, like the being cognizant that it's actually a challenging thing is that one thing you do not get good automated feedback on is how you sound when you're on a call or on a video conference. And so it's this weird where you have to tell, and then like, oh, they're blipping out, but I can understand them. How bad does it have to get to say something? And then people aren't even sure, is it everybody, right? That whole awkward, everybody's been through that. But I think the people who are like, sure, I call my mom on my way to work with my little earbuds. I'm just going to use those. It's like, well, make sure that actually is a good, you probably do already have fine equipment for it. But if you're using your laptop mic and you're sitting there typing away, I've got a client, she's the one who's got the budget, and man, she hops on every time she's not at home and there's ka-thunk, 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 ka-thunk. And it's like, you're the client. I don't really want to say, could you either mute or stop? You're the most senior person in the room. So that I think does take being very conscious. And that also goes, if you're on a video, watch where your head is. Like it is distracting to you if somebody else, all you can see is from their nose above. Pay attention to your own. Try to sit roughly in the center.
Can we talk about that? Video on off. So this is like a new thing where like I'm now jumping on calls and you sometimes like have 10, 20, 30 people on a call, and there'll always be like, I don't know, 10 to 20% that don't have their video on. And I want to be kind, but my assumption straight away is like, you're turning your video off because you're not paying attention. Like that's the message. I know there was a whole chat in the Old Women in Analytics Now Diversity and Analytics chat channel in Slack previously about women who have this whole thing about like, should you have to do your makeup and your hair and all this sort of stuff. And I totally sympathize with that.
Yep.
But to me, like not having your video on, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have my video on the other day. It's because I was emptying the dishwasher while I listened to a conference call.
Yeah. So I'm of two opinions. I think if it's a small meeting where you're going to be participating regularly, then if possible, video on is best. If it's a 20-person meeting where you're just listening in and you're probably not even going to talk, or if you're going to talk, it's for like 3 seconds at one time, then I'm pretty okay with video off. But anytime you're meeting with someone one-on-one or in a smaller group setting where there's going to be a lot of interaction, the video provides so much more context to your voice. That's the whole purpose, and it's a huge benefit. So if possible, and I know at Search Discovery, we kind of were, we have a lot of remote people there. So they Search, I don't work there anymore. So they probably don't even have this policy anymore. It's probably totally different and vastly improved. But we tried to kind of embrace sort of a commitment to each other. But if possible, for internal meetings, we would try to have our video on. And that goes for people in the office and it goes for people remote. We're all going to try to do that together. And, it's not easy for everyone and not everybody liked it, but everybody chipped in and we got through it. I think it actually helped communication overall.
There's a big caveat, which I think, especially as people are working from home, and it ties to something we said earlier, and that is understand the difference between upload bandwidth and download bandwidth. Sure. And if people are saying we're having a hard time, you're breaking up, that is your upload bandwidth, which is going to be the smaller number, and pushing the video up. It's been funny. So that's actually been comical. It's possible that there is a company that potentially Michael used to work for. I don't want to name them and shame them, but they opened up an office in Cleveland that has notoriously not great Wi-Fi. And so there have been times where that company, where they have a policy very similar to what Michael described, but it's actually like, really? The office has, worse. So I think it's preferred to be on. There are the exceptions of this meeting is called over lunch and somebody's going to be eating, so you're balancing, I'm on the call, but I'm shoveling food in my face, which is rarely me. Like, that's another weird part of my routine. I ate at my desk all the time when I was in an office. I never eat at my desk when I work remotely, which is, I don't know how that worked out.
I still do.
I do, and I need to stop doing it.
I need to move away from it. Yeah, I feel guilty about it.
But see, I do it because then I'm like, I'm going to go walk my dog for 30 minutes. So I'll text some emails while I eat, and then I'll go take a break from my desk.
But I think that's the thing with video. It's preferred, but there are exceptions. And then also, especially now, if there are kids running around, and right now there does feel like there's the dog barking, everybody's kind of understanding of that, but recognizing, saying this is going to be distracting. I'm going to keep my video off.
This is what I'm hoping for. This experience hopefully will end forever the stigma of owning a dog or having a child in your home. If you're going to be working remote, those are things that are just things. And yes, sometimes they'll happen and we just have to be okay with each other. Obviously, you don't want it to be distracting. So like mute your mic and those kinds of things when your dog starts barking or if your kids burst into the room. But the rest of us now, we're all living with it. And now we're all going to have a lot more empathy for each other, I hope. And so maybe that's one teeny tiny silver lining out of all of this.
So we had a new staff member who was introducing himself to the team, and I really sympathize for the poor new people who've gone straight to working from home at a new company. But he was introducing himself and he stood up and he had his baby daughter strapped to his chest who was asleep. So he was like, hi, this is my name. I'm working this team. And was like trying to keep her asleep as he introduced himself. And we had another one where the baby had gotten up from the nap and seen her dad coming downstairs. I wanted to say hi. And the thing that I really love is you see people's humanity, you see their families, you see parents in the background, you see their lives. And it's one thing that I've actually really loved about everyone jumping on calls and working from home.
So here's my concern is that because of the way that this has been kind of forced, and this is coming from kind of a consultancy or agency side where I work from home, I understand the guidelines aside from the one fucking nightmare dog that we're watching for a few months that we would have found a solution if she was permanently here. Our other dogs have been fine. Occasional bark, fine. But is that there are people who are now needing to work from home who are my clients, and they're getting their experience of working remotely under super trying circumstances. And they may have kids. They may not have a space. Their spouse may also be working from home. And they're probably struggling to get the focused, productive time. I worry that whole group, that whole class of employees who are going to go back to their massive enterprises where they rarely work from home are going to have the perception of that's how the professional remote worker lives are, and thinking, well, yeah, they're kind of scattered and doing this, where it's like, no, the ones who've been doing it for a while, I'm going to say we're probably more productive because we have it figured out. Even if there's a kid, it's been great when my kids were here and in school to be able to say hi to them if they came in, if I wasn't in the middle of the meeting, or if even now I get up and walk in and say hi to them. But it's not nearly as fractured and challenging, I think, when you are in that as a somewhat permanent routine. And so I'm a little nervous that they're going to be like making a bunch of assumptions.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That's a really good point.
So I feel like this is maybe a good time to share Sarah Hoffman at Salsa's tweet.
Yeah.
Where she had her funny one where she said, I shared this on Measure Slack. So everybody should sign up for Measure Slack. If you're not there, it's great for remote workers, but I'll share again. I once did an internal lunch and learn presentation with my then preschool age daughter sleeping on my lap. As we were in the Q&A part of at the end, she had woken up and kept asking me who was on the call was asking the questions. One of the people asking questions was the CEO, to which the kiddo responded with, "Wow, she owns the whole company?" Yep, kid. Yep. So, I mean, I think even in the not informed, there is no way anyone who was seeing or hearing that wasn't completely delighted by the experience. So that's back to your point, Mo, that, yeah, people are human beings with families and pets and other things.
So one of the things that I've done when the whole we're all going to work from home thing, we do have a big dining room table, which I do often previously have worked from home from when I've needed to. Jamie has like this old antique desk that belonged to my nana, which is an old writing desk, which is not actually good for setting up your laptop and like screens on. So I still don't know why he's there, or the fact that he has a broken screen that's currently blue, but I think he's colorblind, so he doesn't know that it's blue. But the thing that I did was I set up a new desk. So I like rearranged my whole like lounge area and took what is our bar desk, which has normally all of our spirits on it, and I sat it in a bit of the house that makes me really happy. And I've got like really amazing plants that I love, and I get fresh air. So like for me, I know like sunlight and plants and a comfy chair are like the things that I need to make me excited about going to sit at my desk. My sister thinks I'm mad because there's too much sunlight, and she's like, I don't know how you work with all of that natural light, but I love it. And so I think it is about like,
oh, the melatonin.
Well, I think it's about figuring out like what are the things that will make your office space like nice for you, and having those things in place.
Well, and even going back to that kind of concept of demarcation, like not everybody's going to have the space to kind of build their own specific space or even have that. So it's do very simple things. You literally take a big piece of cardboard and just stick it next to it creates sort of like a little barrier. And even that can help just a little bit. Or like if you have to work in your own room, like cover over at the end of the day, like cover your laptop or your monitor so that you're not staring at it from, your own bedroom. Like all those little things just help just a little bit. And I think, Mo, your idea, getting outside just a little bit every day is kind of crucial. And maybe I'm feeling that more now because of all the social distancing and the fact that I haven't looked at a human person besides my own immediate family for like a long time now.
You're totally allowed to go outside.
Yeah. I do go outside, Tim, and walk the dog. I just don't we do it at hours where we're not likely to run into neighbors. No, I'm just kidding. We actually run into our neighbors all the time because everyone's out walking now because there's nothing else to do. We're all walking everybody and we're like, hey, how's it going? Somebody just told me a story about how they were out and their neighbor daughter crashed her bike and they wanted to run over and help her. And they were like, wait, are we allowed to do that? It's like social distancing is killing us. Anyways, maybe good tip. This actually goes back to something we were talking about as it pertains to internet. John McGowan put in a tip about always trying to have two sources of internet, Wi-Fi and mobile. And I thought that was really good, especially if you're a consultant, being able to just go, like sometimes your Wi-Fi goes out. I think it'll happen more now because more people are using their home Wi-Fi during the day and those kinds of things. Being able to tether over to your mobile quickly and practice making that transition so you could do it relatively quickly is certainly, that's one of those sort of, I would say in a consulting model or agency model, it's one of those 101 skills that I just expect people to build. But if you're new to the whole working from home thing, that's one of those things. Now you could have costs associated with leveraging more data over your phone. So talk to your employer about that.
I mean, it is typically it's your failover, right? And
Yes.
that is a great tip and that's when you say, hey, my internet just went down. I'm on my hotspot, so I'm going to stay off video because it will work better for everyone.
Yep.
So
exactly. Way to bring that point full circle.
So Tim.
Yeah.
Question. One of the things that I've been doing at the moment is like a quick morning stand up, especially with the newbies who joined, because I think if you're brand new at a company and you don't have that like ability to easily turn to someone next to you and ask a simple question, I think it gets tough. But have you ever like been in the practice of doing a morning stand up with anyone or like a whip or?
It's funny. We've got a client right now where somebody who I work with, she is now in the habit of a morning stand up with the client 30 minutes every morning. And I'm like, oh my God, that is brutal. Like I can't not do the math of even if it's kept to 30 minutes, even if it's kept to 15 minutes, because that also will absolutely throw you, out of Michelle's world. Like, well, so your days to have flexibility on when you roll in are the days that stand-up gets canceled. So, I mean, I guess that's the other thing. I think we're going to discover this whole remote working. We're going to find there was a New Yorker cartoon that was, I think that I saw that was something that was doing the like, oh, wow. So there's a bunch of stuff we could have just handled by email.
Yeah. These didn't have to be meetings after all. Yeah, I remember that.
Which I agree with, but I also think that one of the things that I'm noticing is like people are overusing Slack. And my favorite tip, if you're a Slack user, is /Zoom, which you can integrate Zoom into Slack. And you just do Slack Zoom and just be like, hey, instead of us spending like 30 minutes sending hundreds of messages back and forth and it's not clear what the hell we're talking about on either side, /Zoom, like, let's just get in a Zoom call for 10 minutes and nut this out.
I feel like that's part of emotional intelligence, is learning how to see those moments, Mo, where the conversation is like, nope, this will be more productive if we just jump into a Zoom for 5 minutes versus try to continue to bash it out in this medium. Same thing with like Slack versus email versus Jira or whatever you use for tracking things versus Zoom, is sort of picking your right location. I know, Tim, you might have even been a part of this. There was a movement at Search Discovery back in the day to kind of leverage Slack statuses more effectively so that people could tell at a glance, like whether you're away from your desk or there at your desk or in a meeting. So we don't, and Tim is like, yes, nodding his head. Like, of course I was behind all of that.
My integration got turned off somewhere. So like, cause I was fine with it and I don't know how and I just turned it on like this week to be like, yeah, show the icon when I'm in a meeting. So at least people are aware. And
I think that's good. I'm really bad at following those rules and remembering to update it. So I'm really not a good, I like the idea, but I do want to talk about this idea of social connection when you're working remote, because one of the things you don't have, and this is especially true for those that are more extroverted, is those social cues of when it's okay to stop by and chat with someone. Like, when you're in an office and somebody's got their headphones on and they're really like down in their laptop and they're chugging away, you're like, all right, I'm not going to go just interrupt their flow just so I can tell a dumb joke. I'll wait maybe for a different time.
But there's always the people in the office who, even when I adopt that posture, they still come and interrupt me. So, you've got to read the social cues.
Well, Tim, you're kind of like an international superstar, Tim. It's a little different.
It's hard to get some Tim time.
Yeah, exactly. And your bodyguard should be the one kind of handling that. So I don't understand. Yes, Tim has a bodyguard.
Okay, carry on with your point,
But
sir.
when you're on Slack, you don't see any of that unless, people are doing a good job updating like kind of their status. I'm in a meeting right now. So what I've always encouraged people to do is just say, hey, throw it out there. I'm not going to hold myself responsible to respond immediately because I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'll know that and I'll come pick it up at the right time and just expect that. And then the other thing is find ways to just randomly intersect, a la just stopping by somebody's desk to say, hey, that's important to keep doing. And so that's hard to do. And I always always encouraged all of my remote people to kind of push themselves a little bit, to just sort of throw a, hey, how you doing out there? I'm just checking in to say, hey, for no other reason than I'm your friend and I wanted to chat with somebody for a few minutes and I had a couple free minutes, because those connections are super important. And then the other thing is, as a leader, I think it's super important to do that as well, because it's sort of like the same way you'd get up and just sort of try to stop by and wave at people and make sure that, hey, I see you, I notice you, I'm here for you, whatever you need. You got to still find ways to kind of make that happen. And I know actually it was a little controversial, but I'm still actually a huge fan of it. We used to have a Friday afternoon meeting that literally had no agenda. There was nothing to do.
And slowly fewer and fewer attendees. But
Helbs, we've been doing that for lunches. Like an open Zoom, and then it's like an open Zoom, people bring your lunch, and if you just want to like talk shit, Tim's shaking his head, he's like, this is the worst idea. But for some people, they need that.
No,
like
they need it. And that's just it. It was an optional meeting. You didn't have to come to it if you didn't want to, but there was always a group of people who did come, Tim. And it wasn't because I wanted to have another meeting. It was because I wanted people to be sure there was a social outlet of some kind that didn't have any other business agenda tied to it.
We have very different perceptions of how that meeting evolved, but I
had a blast at that meeting. It was a terrible meeting. It was a huge waste of time, but I loved it.
But I actually do this, and I know others who do it more, both with colleagues or with others. Actually, Helbs, you and I used to do it. The actually setting up remote. We did it with a glass of scotch periodically in the afternoon. We did it 2 or 3 times. Like, hey, we should catch up, today, tomorrow, whatever. We'd find a time and then we'd talk. And I've got some other cases where I do have like a bi-monthly, virtual coffee. And there are others who have, maybe it's bi-weekly, depending on the relationship. If it's like, hey, this is actually, I enjoy this person and we're not running into each other often enough and we get stuff out of it. Yeah, throw it on the calendar. And then also know that if you can have the discussion, say, you know what, we're going to schedule this to be weekly and it's going to get canceled 2 times out of 3 because one of us is going to have a conflict, and that's okay. So there are different ways to work that. I think so I have done that occasionally.
Can I clarify, bi-weekly, is that twice a week or once every 2 weeks? I feel like the term fortnightly might be more helpful in that situation.
Can be either one.
It can literally be either one, Mo. This is how broken the English language is.
Well, you could just use fortnightly and then that would solve your problem because it happens every 14 nights.
We could use fortnightly, but we don't live in Australia, unfortunately. So it's not a word here.
We aggressively use the letter Z as well. So
one of my favorite sessions since I started working from home, I mentioned to one of the guys, I was like, hey, I'm seeing these weird numbers. Can I just jump on a Zoom and talk you through it before I start going down a rabbit hole? And then one of the girls in the team who is like, I don't know, she's just a very inquisitive person. And so she loves listening to other people's meetings and calls and trying to figure stuff out from it. So I was like, hey, do you want to listen in? She's like, yes. And so the 3 of us jumped on a call. One of the guys had a beer. I had a wine. It was the end of the day, 6:00 the other night. And I basically just screen shared as I worked through my data problem. And then the other girl on the call was like, hey, I also have a data problem. Can I share my screen now and work through it? And we were like, oh, have you looked at this? Have you looked at, and it was just this little working powwow. And it was the best bit of all 3 of our days. It was hands down the best bit because we couldn't just lean over to someone and be like, hey, this thing's weird. Can I bounce ideas off you? And so for those people who are not used to working from home, I really encourage you to give that a crack.
Definitely day drinking is a huge thing for working at home. That's what I took away. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So hopefully you're hearing some tips that are going to help or have helped, or you may be hearing some that you want to share with us too. But we do have to start to wrap up.
What?
We are doing... Yeah, we gotta start wrapping up. No.
Well, actually, I do feel like sometimes the challenge of that catch up is that it's harder. It's sometimes harder to end it if you've got 3 or 4 people, unless you have another meeting. Because I would remember that too. Helbs and I would jump on a call to chat, and it was an hour and a half. Same things happened to me with Gershoff when we've been slacking, and then I'm like, it's an hour. We probably should move on with our lives.
Yeah, we're blazing through. I will admit to creating a next meeting just so that I can say, okay, I've got to jump to my next meeting sometimes. But other times,
I know it starts at a quarter till, but
it's weird. It's really weird. Oh, it just showed up. Or, the old like, oh, CEO just walked into my office, so got to go. I use that one all the time these days. CEO is my dog, Bella. Okay, we do want to do last calls because while this is sort of a different and unique show, given our different and unique times, figured we could do some last calls too. Tim, you want to kick us off with the last call?
Sure. I feel like I just want to mention it because in case I just want to link to it, and it was one of the tweets that we didn't get to, which was at Happy Sky Kai, Tanke Feng.
Oh, yes.
And he actually wrote and recorded the self-quarantine song. So
was awesome.
With luck, we'll actually get permission to maybe include it in the out. But if not, we will link to it. So my actual last call, some people, like I'm finding all of my evening events and commitments are canceled. There is a little bit more free time. So it can be an opportunity to dive into something. So something that I've actually been diving into, because I feel like as an analyst, we always get told like, well, just find a data set and play with it. Like if you have the skills, why don't you get out of the marketing or the digital data? And a while back, DuckDuckGo published on GitHub their tracker radar, which basically I think they went to like 44,000 different sites that they crawl. And then it's kind of looked at all of the third-party domains that are setting cookies or doing fingerprinting or executing JavaScript on all of those sites. And then it basically, in a JSON structure, a separate file for every one of those third-party domains. There are like 3,000 or 4,000 of them. It's a data set on GitHub. And I was like, that will be fun data to play with. And I've managed to kind of start fiddling around with it and see just the breadth and scope of Google and Facebook. So it's accidentally actually work related, but the tracker radar from DuckDuckGo.
Very nice. What about you, Mo? What's your last call?
Well, I mean, COVID-19's all around us. And one of my favorite things has actually been some of the articles. I love how many people are trying to explain what an exponential curve is, and like people who don't work in data like scratching their head being like, but we only have 500 cases. And you're like, yeah, cool. Do you get what that means? So the two resources that I really enjoyed personally, the Washington Post had a corona simulator about like what happens if you practice social distancing versus if you don't. The other one that I also really loved, it was an incredibly long read, I think it was like a 22-minute article, was a post on Medium by Thomas Payo. Thomas,
Yeah.
Coronavirus Act Today or People Will Die. And like, that's a very blunt title, but I thought both of those were really good ways of explaining what's going on to people who maybe aren't as familiar with data. And yeah, I kind of love how much thinking about data helps you understand this problem right now.
Yeah.
I will claim counterfactuals are going to become something we'll be trying to explain a year from now in causal inference, because we can only the world will follow one path, and the different countries' responses are kind of what will be an opportunity for data scientists to try to explain causal inference and causality. But it's going to have to be, I think, people are making claims about it now. I think it's going to have to be a little more in the rearview mirror down the road.
Yeah, I've been my Twitter feed has quite a few more epidemiologists and virologists that I follow than I did a month ago. So it's been very interesting.
I thought you were going to say there are a lot of people who've turned into, apparently they're epidemiologists.
Well, there's definitely some armchair epidemiologists out there.
How do we explain flattening the curve? I've said this for years. I mean, I saw a chart yesterday.
I like to call myself a citizen epidemiologist. Ooh. Advanced epidemiology. Is that a thing? Like advanced analytics?
Oh, there you go.
All right. Enough of my bugaboos. Okay. So my last call, I've been spending a lot of time thinking. There's a lot of we're all under a lot of stress. And I think there's a lot of us that are spending our time trying to figure out what we can do to help in some way. And it's really hard to know sometimes what actions to take. And there's so many things going on. And so I've been kind of racking my brain of like, well, Michael, what can you do? And I was like, well, I do have some time on my hands that I could contribute. And what am I good at? And so as I was thinking about it, I realized that right now in our industry and every industry, but I know the digital analytics industry, so that's my industry, there's a lot of companies who are going to immediately do hiring freezes or already have done hiring freezes. And there's a lot of contractors and freelancers and people maybe who've even lost jobs who need to find work. And there may be work that could be done maybe on a more ad hoc basis or contract basis that people could partner up and do. And typically in our industry, that's done through recruiters and things like that. And certainly let's keep all that flowing. But in the meantime, one thing I'm good at is hearing what people need done. And I'm good at understanding what skill sets need to be applied to that. So what I've done is I've created a little clearinghouse of sorts where anybody who needs contract work, we can get you through a little screening process and fill out a form and we'll meet with you. And then any company who needs some help, maybe it's just a Tableau dashboard or some tagging in GTM or whatever that is, we can connect you with those people. And we're offering that for free for both sides. So no one pays anything. It's just us trying to help the community. And mostly by us, I mean me just personally. And then there may be some other folks that are chipping in to help. And we'll do it confidentially and all those things. But it's just a way for us to try to make a little bit of a dent in our piece of the world, right? So
is this is there a page on your site or somewhere that's
we have a Google form that people can fill out. So we'll be publicizing that through our show notes and also the Measure Slack and probably my Twitter, and we'll just try to get that out to as many people as possible. And so also just help spread the word. I also love highlighting the people who've been doing some really awesome things. And I think in the intervening time between when we record and when we go live, there's going to be a lot more of that. But I've really appreciated, people like Yo-Yo Ma, who's been putting out music on his Twitter account just for people to listen to, and Josh Gad, who just randomly is reading children's stories at night. Just those are really great expressions. And I think all of us could take a look and find little ways that we can kind of put a little light out there. So you've probably been listening and thinking these guys have it all wrong on working remotely. And that's why we would refer you to the 33 Tangents podcast, who definitely has this as a core competency. All right. But we'd also love to hear from you on the Measure Slack or Twitter or our LinkedIn page. And so please do reach out to us. This is a pretty awesome community. And I think the coronavirus or COVID-19 is we're calling it, won't end that. It will simply reveal some of its truest nature and beauty. Also, obviously, no show would be complete without a quick mention of our producer, Josh Crowhurst, who does such a great job and has led the charge on social distancing from Hong Kong. Way to go, Josh. Well, way to keep
rolled straight from the protests into the virus.
Stay safe out there, Josh. We're rooting for you. Anyway, whatever you do, whether you're working from home and you're socially distant, just remember, keep analyzing.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or Measure Slack group. We welcome your comments and questions. Visit us on the web at analyticshour.io, facebook.com/analyticshour, or at analyticshour on Twitter.
So smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Analytics. Oh my God. What the fuck does that even mean?
Stay safe out there, Josh. We're rooting for you. Anyway.
That has a different meaning in Australia, by the way.
Oh, what is it? We're not doing that. Oh my God. Oh, I'm gonna die.
My mom was a school teacher when she came to Australia and kept saying she was rooting for the football team, and the students found it highly entertaining.
We are advocates of your general success, sir.
I'm a slurper. I don't know how to drink hot liquids. Does that come through?
Yep, that came through really nice. Let's test it again. Yep.
Again? Ooh.
All right. I'm just reading tweets like, I will remember COVID-19 as the time when quote-unquote data scientists pretended they were epidemiologists and proved to the world that they were neither. Dang! In addition to social distancing, I've also started doing emotional distancing. Just out of an abundance of caution.
I think, Michael, you need to probably unmute when you're going to talk.
That's just your opinion, Tim. I was just talking on mute. I was just demonstrating for people listening to the podcast that that's one of those things you have to learn how to do when you're working remote.
Oh, that's good. Now you can do a hard stop.
Now we can keep it in.
Was home all day. I had like 7 coffees. The 4 walls are closing in. Conference calls, topic of every meeting. Coronavirus everywhere. Home office now, home office then. Social distance from everyone. Self-quarantine, flattening the curve one day at a time. Self-quarantine, with toilet paper you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Rock flag and put your pants on.
I knew it was going to be a pant thing.